cherished in the years to come.
True enough, in the gathering gloom of my Manhattan apartment, it all came back.
You going to the prom?
Asked Schwartz, as we chewed on our salami sandwiches under the stands of the football field, which we preferred, for some reason, in that time of our lives, to take our lunch.
Yeah, I guess so.
I answered, as coolly as I could.
Who are you taking? Schwartz asked while sucking out a bottle of knee-high orange.
Oh, I don't know. I was thinking of Daphne Bigelow.
I had just dropped the name of the most spectacular girl in the whole school, if not the whole state itself.
No kidding, Schwartz answered.
In a proper tone of awe and respect, tinged with disbelief.
Yeah, I figured I'd give her a break.
Twice in my life up to that point, Daphne Bigelow had distinctly acknowledged my presence in the halls between classes.
Once actually speaking to me.
Oh, hi there, Fred.
Hi, Daph.
I replied wittily.
The fact that my name was not Fred was really neither here nor there. She had spoken to me.
Well, you gotta go formal. I read on the bulletin board that said you wear a summer formal to the prom.
Oh, no kidding.
What's a summer formal?
It's where you wear one of those white coats.
I was known as the resident expert in our group of all things of high life. This was because my mother was a fanatical Fred Astaire fan.
You gotta rent them.
I said with the finality of an expert. 2 weeks later, each one of us received a prim white envelope containing an engraved invitation.
The junior class is proud to invite you to the junior prom, to be held at the Cherrywood Country Club beginning at 8 p.m. June 5th. Dance to the music of Mickey Isley and his Magic Music Makers. Summer formal required. Signed, the committee.
It was the first engraved invitation I'd ever received.
The puberty rites had begun. That night, around the supper table, the talk was of nothing else.
So, who are you going to take?
My old man asked.
Getting right to the heart of the matter.
Who you're taking to the prom was considered a highly significant decision, possibly affecting your whole life, in which in some tragic cases, it did.
His mother paused while slicing the meatloaf. Why not take that nice Wanda Hickey?
Come on, Ma. This is the prom. This is important. You don't take Wanda Hickey to no prom.
Wanda Hickey was the only girl I knew for an absolute fact liked me.
And ever since the 3rd grade, Wanda had been hanging outside my social circles. She laughed at my jokes, and once, when I was 12, she sent me a Valentine. No, I haven't decided who I'm going to take. Well, I was kind of thinking of Daphne Bigelow.
The old man set his bottle of Pabst Blue Ribbon down carefully on the table.
Daphne Bigelow was the daughter of one of the larger men in town. There was, in truth, a street named after her family.
You're a real glutton for punishment, son.
My old man was in one of his philosophical moods.
Yeah, he leaned back and blew some smoke towards the ceiling and said, yep, too many guys settle for the first skirt that shows up and regret it for the rest of their lives.
Pretty much ignoring the innuendo, my mother set the mashed potato down on the table and said,
Well, I think Wanda is a very nice girl. But then what I think doesn't matter.
my mother, the practiced turn of phrase of the veteran martyr, whose role in life was to suffer as publicly as possible.
Well, I gotta rent a summer formal.
Well, la-dee-da, his kid brother said.
With characteristically eloquent understatement.
My father like son. The next day after school, Schwartz and I went downtown to a place we had both passed countless times in our meanderings. It read, sputtering neon script, the sign said,
Al's Swank Formal Wear, rented by the day or hour. Schwartz and I went down, Schwartz and I climbed the narrow dark wooden steps to the 2nd floor. And then there was a red arrow, and that informed us to turn left.
I wonder if Fred Astaire ever comes here.
Come on, Schwartz, this is serious.
But I could feel the excitement rising deep inside of me.
The prom, the engraved invitation, the summer formal, all starting to come together now.
Al's swing formal wear turned out to be a small room with a yellow light bulb hanging from the ceiling, a couple of tall glass cases with suits hanging, a counter, and a smudgy full-length mirror. Schwartz opened the negotiations with a swarthy, bald, hawk-eyed, short-sleeved man who appeared behind the counter.
Around his neck hung a yellow measuring tape. He had a worn vest with a half a dozen chalk pencils sticking out of his pockets. Okay, boys, so you want to make it big at the prom, am I right? Well, yeah, you came to the right place. So you're going to that hop out at Cherrywood, right?
Yeah.
And you want a summer formal. Hey, Morty!
He shouted to someone in the bowels of the establishment.
Here's 2 more for you for that bash at Cherrywood. I'd say, 136 regular, 140 short.
His practiced eye had immediately sized us correctly.
Coming up! Okay, on the 36 shorts out, but I'm out of 40s. What about that 42 regular that just came back from that Italian wedding?
Cut the talk and bring the goods.
The 42 ain't been cleaned
Bring
yet.
it out already.
Morty emerged, a tall, thin, sad man in a gray smock, even balder than Al. He carried 2 suits on hangers, draped them over the counter, gave Al a dirty look, and stalked back into the shadows.
Okay, boys. First you.
He nodded to Schwartz.
It should fit good. Here, take it and go try it on behind the curtain. It's maybe a little long in the cuffs, but we'll take them up.
Schwartz grabbed the hanger and scurried behind the green curtain.
Al held up the other suit, and in the middle of a dark, reddish-brown stain that covered the entire breast pocket, there was this neat little hole right through the jacket.
Al turned the hanger around and he stuck his finger through the hole. Hey, Morty!
What now?
How about this hole in the 42? Can you fix it by tonight?
What do you want, miracles?
Don't worry, kid. We can fix this up good as new. You'll never tell it ain't a new coat.
Schwartz appeared from the fitting room, shrouded in what looked like a parachute with sleeves.
Perfect. Couldn't be better.
He grabbed Schwartz by the shoulders, spun him around, and with a single movement, ran his hand up into Schwartz's crotch, measured the inseam, spun him around again, made 2 pencil marks on the sleeves, yanked the collar, punched Schwartz smartly in the kidney, all the while muttering,
It's made for you. It's just perfect. Couldn't be better. Just like tailor-made.
Schwartz smiled weakly through the ordeal.
And then Al turned to me.
Here, slip on this coat. He held it out invitingly.
I plunged my arms into its voluminous folds.
I felt his iron grip on my shoulder blades as he yanked me around and up and down, his appraising eye darting everywhere.
Just perfect. It couldn't be better. It fits like a glove. We're going to take it in just a little bit in here, a little bias here.
He took out his chalk and made a few marks on my back.
And we'll reweave this hole just like new, and don't worry about that stain. We'll get that out. Must have been some party. Here, try on these pants.
He tossed me a pair of midnight blue trousers.
I was really in the big time now. I mean, sure, they were rumpled and they smelled like some sort of spilled beverage, but they were truly magnificent.
And the waist came just a shade below my armpits.
Beautifully pleated. Tossing aside the curtain, I sashayed out like Gary Grant.
Stand up, kid.
Al breathed into my ear with an aromatic blast of pastrami and pickled herring, which made my head reel.
Perfect. Just right.
He grabbed several yards of the seat of the pants.
And a little in here.
A sudden thrill of pain as he violently measured the inseam.
Then it was all over.
Now, how do you see the shirts? I would recommend our Monte Carlo model. Is a real spiffy number.
That's what we want.
Speaking for Schwartz, who reappeared and was breathing excitedly.
Okay, now, how about studs? You got them?
I'd heard the word stud before, but never in a tailor shop.
Well, I'll toss them in because you're high-class customers. Now, I suppose you want to go first class, right?
Yeah, Schwartz answered for the both of them.
Well, now I'm going to show you something that is exclusive with Al's swank formal wear.
With an air of surreptitious mystery, he reached over, slid open a drawer, and placed atop the counter an object that unfocused my eyes with sheer kaleidoscopic brilliance.
No place else in town can supply you with a genuine Hollywood paisley cummerbund. It is our trademark.
I stared at the magnificent bank of glowing, scintillating fabric, already seeing myself a total smash on the dance floor.
It's only $1 extra, and we're 5 times the price. Adolphe Majou always wears this model. How about it, men?
Sounds great.
We both agreed in unison. After all, you only live once.
Fine, fine. So that's it, boys. I'll have everything ready for you the day before the prom, and you're going to really knock them dead.
Morning and Al's voices broke out in another
Come on,
loud
that shit go.
as we barged ourselves down the stairs and out into the street. Step by step, in the ancient tradition, the tribal ritual was being acted out.
The prom, which was now 2 weeks off, began to occupy our minds most of the waking day. The semester had just about played itself out, and our junior year was almost over.
There was only one thing wrong. As each day ticked inexorably toward the magic night at the Cherrywood Country Club, I still could not steel myself to actually ask out Daphne Bigelow and ask her that fatal question.
Time and time again, I spotted her in the halls, drifting by on gossamer wings.
Her radiant complexion casting a glow on all those around her, her brilliant smile lighting up the corners of 202 homeroom.
But each time, I broke into a fevered sweat and I chickened out at the last instant.
The weekend before prom, sheer torture.
Schwartz, always efficient and methodical, had already made all his plans. So, how you doing with Daphne Bigelow?
Asked Schwartz sardonically, knowing full well the answer.
Oh, that. I haven't had time for it yet.
I lied.
You better get on the stick. You know there's only 1 week left.
Oh, well, who you got lined up, huh?
Clara May Mattingly, Schwartz replied.
In a steady, expressionless voice.
I was kind of surprised, because Clara May was one of those shadowy, quiet girls that was rarely ever mentioned outside of honor roll, and she wore these gold-rimmed glasses. She still had pigtails.
Yep, Schwartz added smugly.
She sure can spell.
It was all I could think of to say that was good about her, other than the fact that she was female.
Are you going to send her a corsage?
I already ordered it. The Cupid Florist.
Schwartz's self-satisfaction was overflowing.
It cost $8.
Holy Christmas, $8.
I was impressed.
That includes a gold pin for it.
A few hours later after supper, I went out gloomily to water the lawn.
A job that purportedly went to earning my allowance, which had reached the all-time high that spring of $3 a week. Deep in my cowardly soul, I knew that I could never ask Daphne Bigelow to be my date.
Refusing to admit it to myself, I whistled moodily as I sprayed the lawn. I watched a few low-flying bats. They skimmed over and then they went up into some poplars.
My kid brother came out on the porch, and from sheer habit, I quickly shot a stream of water over at him, catching him mid-air as he leapt high to avoid the stream.
Superbly executed shot. Let him just right.
He got it full in the chest, his yellow polo shirt clinging to his ribs wetly like a second skin.
Falling at the top of his lungs, he disappeared into the house and slammed the screen door behind him.
Ordinarily, this small triumph would have cheered me up for hours.
Tonight I tasted nothing but ashes.
Suddenly, his face reappeared in the doorway.
I'm gonna tell Ma.
Instantly, like a cobra, I struck, streaming quickly over the screen door. I got him again.
Another scream of rage. Ah! And he was gone.
Again, I sank into my moody sea of reflection. Was I going to boot the prom?
A feeling of helpless rage settled over me as I continued to spray the lawn.
I worked my way down the edge of our weedy bed of sod. Out of the corner of my eye, though, I thought I saw something approaching out of the gloom.
I sprinkled on, not knowing that another piece was being fitted into that intricate mosaic of adolescence.
I kicked absent-mindedly at a passing toad as I soaked down the dandelions.
What are you doing?
Startled, I swung my hose around.
Spraying the white figure on the sidewalk 10 feet away.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I blurted out, seeing at once that I had washed down a girl dressed in white tennis clothes.
Oh. Hi, Wanda. I didn't see you there.
She dried herself with the Kleenex. So, what are you doing?
Sprinkling the lawn?
The toad hopped past, going the other way now.
I squirted him briefly, out of general principles, you know. You've been playing tennis?
Since she was wearing tennis clothes and was carrying a racket, it seemed the right thing to say.
Me and Eileen Akers were playing down at the park. I'm sure glad school's almost over. I can hardly wait. I never thought I'd be a senior. Are you going to college when you graduate next year?
For some reason, I didn't like the drift of this conversation. Yeah, I guess so, if I don't get drafted.
Then it happened.
Without thinking and without even the shadow of suspicion, I heard myself asking, "You going to the prom?"
For a long instant, she said nothing. Just swung her tennis racket in the air.
I guess so.
She finally answered.
"It's going to be great," I said.
Trying to change the subject.
Who are you going with?
She asked as if she really didn't care one way or the other.
I haven't exactly made up my mind yet.
I bent down unconcernedly and pulled out a giant milkweed by the roots.
Neither have I.
She said. It was then that I realized there was no sense fighting it.
Some guys, they're meant to dance forever with the Daphne Biglows on these ballroom floors under the endless starry skies, and others,
well, they do the best they can.
Wanda?
Yes?
Oh, would you, would you, see, I was thinking.
Yes?
Here I go, and over the horns. Wanda, how about, going to the prom with me?
She stopped twitching her tennis racket. Of course. I've had a lot of invitations, but I didn't say yes to any of them yet. I guess it would be fun to go with you.
The die was cast. There was no turning back.
It was an ironclad rule. Once you asked a girl to prom, only a total crumb would even consider ducking out of it.
There have been one or two cases in the past, but the perpetrators have become social pariahs, driven from the tribe. I broke the news to Schwartz the next morning, after biology.
Hey, Schwartz, how about double dating for the prom, man? I've already Simonized the car. She's all set.
So, you sending Daphne that orchid, or what?
Well, no.
What do you mean? You gotta send a corsage.
I mean, I'll send a corsage.
But I just thought you said you weren't.
Schwartz was not going to make this easy.
Schwartz, I've decided not to ask Daphne Bigelow to the prom.
He looked directly at me, which caused him to slam into two or three strolling freshman girls. Their books slid across the floor where they were trampled underfoot by the thundering mob.
Oh, who are you taking?
Wanda Hickey.
Wanda Hickey?
Wanda Hickey had never been what you could call a major star in our Milky Way. We walked on, saying nothing until finally, as we opened our lockers, Schwartz said,
Well, she sure is good at algebra.
I mean, it was true. Wanda was an algebra shark in the same way that Clara May was a spelling nut.
Maybe we both got what we deserved.
The prom was just 5 days away now. This was the last week of school.
Ahead, our long summer and the sun was stretched out like a lazy road. For many of us, it was the last peaceful summer we were to know.
That morning on the way to school, I had gone down to the Cupid florist and ordered Wanda's orchid. $24 were shrinking fast.
And that $8 bite for the orchid didn't help.
Schwartz and I were going to split the gas, and I'd come to carry the woman. Maybe $1 a piece. After paying for the formal, I'd have a fast $10 to my name for the prom.
And $10 didn't look as big as it usually did.
I mean, ordinarily $10 would have gotten me through a month of just fooling around, but the prom was really big time.
Friday night, As I sat in the kitchen before going to bed, knocking down a liverwurst on whole wheat and drinking a glass of chocolate milk, the back door slammed open, and in breezed the old man, carrying his bowling bag.
He slid his bowling bag across the floor, pretending to lay one down right in the groove. His right arm extended with gracefully right foot trailing. This is the classic bowling pose. Right in the pocket!
He opened the refrigerator, fished around for a beer, then sat down heavily, took a deep draught from the bottle, burped loudly, and said,
Well, tomorrow's the big night, ain't it?
It sure is.
So, you taking Daphne Bigelow?
Nah, Wanda Hickey. I figured I'd give her a break.
So, how you fixed it tomorrow night? The old man asked suddenly as he swirled his beer bottle around to raise the head.
Oh, what do you mean?
What do you mean? I mean, how you fixed?
My father never talked money to me. I got my allowance every Monday, and that was that.
I got about $10.
That was all he said. After sitting in silence for a minute or so,
You know, I always wished I could have gone to a prom.
How can you answer something like that?
he had barely gotten out of the 8th grade when he had to go to work, and he never stopped for the rest of his life.
Well, what the hell? You know, I was really hot tonight, son. I had a streak of 6 strikes in the second game. With that, the old man reached and pulled out his wallet. He said, hey, look, don't tell Ma.
He handed me a $20 bill. I was so astounded by this unprecedented gesture that it never even occurred to me to say thanks.
He would have been embarrassed if I had.
A miracle had come to pass. There was no doubt about it now. The prom was going to be an unqualified gas.
The next day dawned bright and sunny, as perfect as a June day can be in a steel mill town.
I was out early, dusting off the car. If there's anything more romantic than a convertible in June, I'd like to hear about it.
Eventually, I went into the house and began the even more laborious process of getting myself in shape for the evening ahead.
Locking the bathroom door, I took 2 showers.
Wearing a new bar of Lifebuoy down to the nub.
I knew what happened to people who didn't use it. Every week, little comic strips under Moon Mullins. They told endless tales of the disastrous B.O.
It would not happen to me. Then I shaved for the 2nd time that week, using a new Gillette Blue Blade. As usual, when important shave was executed, I nicked myself nastily in several places.
Son of a bitch!
I muttered, plastering the wounds with little pieces of toilet paper.
Carefully, I went over every inch of my face, battling the age-old enemy, blackhead, and polished off the job with a copious application of the stinging Aqua Velva.
Twilight was fast approaching when I emerged from the bathroom.
Laid out on my bed was my beautiful summer formal. Al really was right.
The elegant white coat truly gleamed in virginal splendor. Not a trace of the red stain or the sinister hole could be detected. The coat was ready for another night of celebration. Its lapels spotless, its sleeves smooth and uncreased.
Carefully, I undid the pins and festooned my pleated Monte Carlo shirt.
It was the damnedest thing I'd ever seen. Once I got it straightened out, the long, trailing, gauze-like shirt tails, a crinkly front that thrummed like sheet metal and a collar that seemed to be carved out of white rock. I slipped it on.
I panicked. It had no buttons, just holes.
Rummaging around frantically in the box that the suit came in, I found a cellophane envelope containing little round black things.
Ripping the envelope open, I poured them out, and there were five of the little buttons, and 2 of them just went under the bed.
Down on my hands and knees, already beginning to lose my Lifebuoy sheen, I scrambled around for the missing culprits. The ordeal was well underway.
7 o'clock was approaching so fast it was unbelievable.
Back before the mirror again, I struggled to get the studs in place before the concrete slits. Sweat was beginning to show under my arms.
I got 2 in over the breastbone, and now I tried to get the collar on over my Adam's apple. It was impossible.
I could feel within me several sobs beginning to form.
The more I struggled, the more ham-fisted I became. Oh no.
2 blackish thumb smudges appeared on my snowy white collar.
Ma! Look at my shirt! Look at it!
He rushed in from the kitchen carrying a paring knife and a pan full of apples.
Look! Look!
I pointed to the telltale prints.
Well, don't touch it. Taking control immediately, dirty collars were her specialty since she'd been fighting them all her life.
She darted out of the room and returned instantly with an art gum eraser.
Now hold still.
I obeyed as she carefully worked the stud into place and then artistically erased the 2 monstrous thumbprints.
Where's your tie?
The box.
The collar had placed an iron clamp around my windpipe.
She rummaged around and came up with the bow tie. Then she picked up the midnight blue trousers and held them open.
So that I could slip into them without bending over. True to his word, Al had taken in the seat.
The pants clamped me in a vice-like grip that threatened to emasculate me before the evening was even out.
I sucked in my stomach, zippered up the fly, stood straight as a ramrod before the mirror.
I had no other choice.
Now give me your foot.
My mother was down on all fours, pulling the silky black socks onto my feet. Then, out of a box on the bed, she removed a gleaming pair of patent leather dancing pumps.
She grabbed my left foot and shoved them into one of them, using her finger as a shoehorn. I tromped down.
Ah! She wailed in pain. I can't get my finger out.
I hobbled around, taking her finger with me.
Stand still.
I stood like a crane, 1 foot in the air, her finger jammed deep in the heel.
Rusty, come here.
My kid brother, who was sulking under the daybed, ran into the room.
Pull off his shoe, Rusty.
She was frantic.
What for?
No stupid questions. Just do what I say.
I was getting an enormous cramp in my left buttock.
Stand still. You're breaking my finger.
Rusty looked on impassively, observing a scene that was later to weave into family legend, embroidering it more and more as the years went by, making himself into the hero, of course.
Rusty, take off his shoe.
He squirted my t-shirt.
If you don't take off his shoe this instant, you're gonna regret it.
This time, her voice was low and menacing.
We both knew that tone. End of the line.
Rusty bent over and tugged off the shoe.
She toppled over backward in relief, rubbing her finger, which was already blue. The gleaming pumps were put in place without further incident.
I stood as encased in armor.
What's this thing?
She was behind me, and I executed a careful 180-degree turn.
It's my cummerbund.
Her face lit up like an Italian sunrise.
A cummerbund?
She had seen Fred Astaire in many a cummerbund, while he spun down marble staircases with Ginger Rogers in his arms. But this was the first actual specimen that she had been close to.
She picked it up reverently. Its paisley brilliance lighting up the room like an iridescent jewel. Now how does it work? Oh, I see, it has clips in the back. Hold still.
Around my waist it went. She drew it tight. The snaps clicked into place.
And it rode snugly halfway up my chest.
She picked up the snowy coat and held it out.
I lowered my arms and I straightened it up.
And there I stood.
Adonis. Taking my leave as Cary Grant would have done, I sauntered out the front door, turned to give my mother a jaunty wave.
Just in time for her to call him back to pick up Wanda's corsage.
Which I left on the front table.
Slipping carefully into the front seat with the cellophane-topped box beside me, I leaned forward slightly to avoid wrinkling my coat. I started the motor and shoved off into the warm summer night. Even before my brakes had stopped squealing, Wanda was out on the front porch, her mother fluttering about her, and her father lurking in the background, beaming.
With stately tread, I moved up the walk.
My pants were so tight that if I'd taken one false step, goodness knows what would have happened.
Wanda wore a long turquoise taffeta gown, her milky skin and golden hair radiating in the glow of the porch light.
This was not the old Wanda.
For one thing, she didn't have her glasses on, and her eyes were unnaturally large and liquid, the way true myopia victims always are.
Gee, thanks for the orchid.
Her voice sounded strained.
In accordance with tribal custom, she too was being mercilessly clamped by straps and girdles.
Her mother, an exact copy of Wanda, only slightly puffy here and there.
You'll take good care of her, won't you?
We stood in the doorway as we drove off through the soft night towards Schwartz's house.
And when we got there, Schwartz rushed out of the house, his white coat, ghost in the blackness, his hair agleam with Brill cream, surrounded by a palpable aura of, Lifebuoy.
5 minutes later, Clara May piled into the back seat beside him, carefully holding up her daffodil yellow skirts, her long, slender neck arched.
She too wasn't wearing any glasses. Who knew a good speller could be so pretty?
At the Cherrywood Country Club, Japanese lanterns danced in the breeze through the open doors in the garden, bathing the dance floor in a fairy tale glow.
I found myself saying things like, why, hello there, Albert, and how are you? Oh, yes, the weather is perfect.
A few of my friends were lurking around, making tasteless remark as Mickey Isley and her magic music maker struck up the sultry sounds that had made them famous in every steel mill town that ringed Lake Michigan. There was a hushed moment with Mickey Isley stood in the baby spot, her wavy hair shining, before a microphone shaped like a chromium bullet.
All right, boys and girls, now something a little romantic.
The metallic ring of feedback framed for words like an echoing nimbus.
We have a request. When the swallows come back to Capistrano, we're going to turn down the lights.
Oh, wow. Man, the lights faded even lower, and only the Japanese lanterns glowed dimly. Well, there was a red, a yellow, a green, ooh, a blue. And all in this enchanted darkness.
It was unquestionably the high point of my existence.
Wanda and I began to maneuver around the floor.
My sole experience in dancing had been gained from reading Arthur Murray ads and practicing with a pillow for a partner behind the locked door of the bathroom.
As we shuffled across the floor, I could see the black footprints on the page before my eyes, saying, 1, 2, 3, pause.
The wool carnation rode high up on my lapel and was beginning to scratch my cheek, and in an instant, an incessant itch began to nag at my right shoulder.
There was some kind of wire or horsehair or something in the shoulder pad beginning to bore its way in my flesh.
And by now the concrete collar, far from having wilted, had set into the consistency of carbonium, and its incessant abrasive action had removed a wide strip of skin encircling my neck.
As for my voice, due to manic strangulation of the collar, it was now a little more than a horse croak.
When the swallows return to Capistrano.
I began to notice Wanda's orchid leering up at me from her shoulder. Oh.
It was the most repulsive flower I had ever seen.
At least 14 inches across, it looked like some sort of overgrown Venus flytrap. Waiting for the right moment to strike.
Deep purple, with an obscene yellow tongue that stuck straight out of it, greenish knobs at the end, it clashed almost audibly with her turquoise dress.
It looked like it was breathing, and it clung to her shoulder as if it had claws.
I glided back and forth with my graceful box step. My left shoulder began to develop an itch.
Well, that helped take the mind off the one in the right.
Which was beginning to feel like an army of hungry soldier ants on the march. The contortions I made to relieve this agony
were camouflaged nicely by a short sneezing fit brought on by my orchid.
which was exhaling directly into my face.
So was Wanda, with a heady essence of Smith Brothers cough drops and sauerkraut.
Wanda started to sweat.
Which I felt running down her back.
My own back was already so wet you could read the label on my undershirt right through my dinner jacket.
Another Arthur Uri ad man, Schwartz was doing the exact same step with Claire May.
Directly behind me.
Each time we took our 4-part lockstep, our elbows dug smartly into each other's ribs.
So that you wouldn't notice, I pulled Wanda closer.
Sighing, she hugged him back.
I felt these bumpy things under her taffeta gown, little hooks and knobs.
Schwartz got me a nasty shot in the ribs just as I bent over to kiss her.
Right on the bridge of the nose.
Tasted salty.
During a brief intermission, Schwartz and I carried paper cups dripping syrupy punch back to the girls.
Who had just spent some time in the ladies' room struggling unsuccessfully to repair the damage.
Of the first half.
As we were sipping, a face from my dim past floated by from out of nowhere. Haughty, alabaster, green-eyed.
Dangerous.
Hi, Daff.
I muttered as I spilled a little punch on my gleaming pumps, which had turned in the past hour into a pair of Iron Maidens.
Oh, Howard! I'd like you to meet Budge. Budge Cameron. He's at Princeton. Budge, this is Howard.
A languid figure.
Probably born in a summer formal.
He loomed overhead, but then they were gone.
Funny, I couldn't even remember liking her.
The lights dimmed again, and we swung back into action. They opened with Sleepy Lagoon.
1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause.
It was certain now.
I had broken out into a raging rash. It felt like spreading lava across my shoulder blades under the sweat.
The horsehair, meanwhile, had penetrated my chest cavity and was working its way toward a vital organ.
Trying manfully to ignore it, I started fixatedly at a tiny turquoise ribbon that held Wanda's golden ponytail in place.
With troubles of her own, Wanda leveled an equally gay as maroon wool carnation, which by this time had wilted into a clump of lint.
All of a sudden, it was over, and we were out.
Into the driving rain.
Wanda, Schwartz, Claire May, and I piled into the soggy seats of my car.
Once I wrangled the top back into position.
And we took off. So do you know what happens to a maroon wool carnation on a white sergeant lapel in a heavy June downpour in the Midwest where it rains not water, but carbolic acid from the steel mill fallout?
Oh, I know. I had a dark, wide, spreading maroon stripe that went all the way down to the bottom of my white coat. My French cuffs, they were covered with grease from fighting the top.
And I had cracked a thumbnail.
Which was beginning to throb.
We arrived at the Red Rooster, already crowded with other candidates for adulthood.
A giant red neon rooster, blue neon tail that flicked up and down in the rain set the tone for this glamorous establishment.
An aura of undefined sin had always been connected with the Red Rooster.
Sly winks, nudging, and adolescent crackling about what purportedly went on in the Red Rooster made it the in spot for such momentous revel.
Its waiters were rumored to secretly be henchmen of the mafia.
But the only thing that we knew for sure about the Rooster was that anybody on the far side of 7 years old could procure any drink known without question.
Surging with anticipation, I guided Wanda through the uproarious throngs of my peers. Schwartz and Claire May, well, they did the same, both exchanging ribald marks with the gang.
We occupied the only remaining table.
Immediately, a beady-eyed waitress, hair gleaming with dippity-doo, sidled over, hovering like a vulture. Can I bring you anything to drink, gentlemen?
My first impulse was to order KO, the Wonder Drink, my favorite chocolate milk.
But, remembering that better things were expected of me on prom night, I said, in my deepest voice,
Make mine a bourbon.
Schwartz grinned in admiration.
Wanda oogled him with great, lovesick, swimming puppy eyes.
Bourbon was the only drink I'd actually heard of.
My old man ordered it down at the Bluebird Tavern all the time. I always wondered what it tasted like.
I was soon to find out.
How will you have it, sir?
I guess in a glass.
I failed to grasp the subtlety of his question.
The waitress snorted in appreciation of this humorous sally. Rocks?
Rocks?
Yeah, I'd heard about getting those too.
But I didn't think it had anything to do with the restaurant. Oh well, what the heck? Sure, I said.
All around me, merrymaking throng was swinging into high gear. Carried away by it all, I added a phrase that I'd heard my old man use often.
Oh, and make it a triple.
I had some vague idea that this was a brand or something.
Triple! Yes, sir!
She knew she was in the presence of a serious drinker.
The waitress turned her gaze to the other man at the table. And you, sir?
Make it the same.
Schwartz had never been a leader. The die was cast. Pink ladies, at the waitress's suggestion, were ordered for the girls, and when the waitress returned, I ordered for reasons even today that I am unable to explain.
Oh, thank you. Lamb chops, yellow turnips, ooh, mashed potatoes. How about gravy with that too?
A side dish, and a side dish of the famous Red Rooster Roquefort Italian coleslaw.
And a strawberry shortcake.
The others wisely decided to stick with their drinks. Before me reposed a sparkling tumbler of amber liquid, ice cubes bobbing merrily on its surface, a plastic swizzle stick sporting an enormous Red Rooster sticking out at a jaunty angle.
Schwartz was similarly equipped.
And the ladies looked lovely in the reflected light of the pulsating jukebox.
I had seen my old man would deal with just this sort of situation.
Raising my beaded glass, I looked around at my companions and said suavely,
"Here's the mud in your eye."
Wanda sighed dreamily, now totally in love with this man in front of her, who sat across from her on this finest night.
Yep.
Schwartz parried wittily.
Hoisting his glass high and slopping a little bourbon on his pants as he did so.
Swiftly, I brought the bourbon to my lips, intending to down it in a single devil-may-care drop.
The way Gary Cooper used to do in the Silver Dollar Saloon.
I did.
And Schwartz followed suit.
Down it went, a screaming 90-proof rocket searing savagely down my gullet.
For an instant, I sat stunned, unable to comprehend what had just happened.
Eyes watering copiously.
I had the brief urge to sneeze.
But my throat seemed paralyzed.
Wanda and Clara May, they began to swim through my vision.
And Schwartz seemed to have disappeared under the table.
He popped up again, face beet red, eyes bulging, jaw slack, tongue lolling.
Isn't this romantic? Isn't this the most wonderful night in all of our lives?
From far off, echoing as if from some subterranean tunnel, I heard Wanda speaking.
Deep down in the pit of my stomach, I felt crackling flames licking at my innards.
I struggled to reply.
To maintain my élan, my savoir-faire.
Yeah. Wanda swam hazily into focus. She was gazing across the table at me with adoring eyes.
Another gentleman?
The waitress was back, smirking.
Schwartz nodded dumbly.
I sat there afraid to move.
An instant later, 2 more triple bourbons materialized in front of us.
The girls raised their pink ladies' hats and said reverently, "Let's drink to the happiest night of our lives."
There's no turning back.
Another screamer rocketed down the hatch.
For an instant, it seemed as though this one wasn't going to be as lethal as the first.
But then,
The room tilted sideways. I felt torrents of cold sweat pouring from my forehead. Clinging to the edge of the table, I watched as Schwartz gagged across from me.
Faster and faster in ever-widening circles, the room, the jukebox, the crowd swirled dizzily around me. Out of the maelstrom, my plate mysteriously appeared before me.
Paper pannied lamb chops, hissing and bubbling grease. Piled yellow turnips, mashed potatoes, awash in rich brown gravy. This is not gonna help.
I struggled to my feet.
A strange rubbery numbness had struck my extremities. My extremities. My feet.
20 seconds later, I was on my knees, gripping the bowl of the John like a life preserver and pitching seas.
Schwartz, imitating him as usual, lay almost prostrate on the floor beside him, body racking with heaving sobs.
We lay there for long minutes, limp, quivering, smelling to high heavens, too weak to get up.
It was the absolute high point of my junior prom.
Finally, we were able to return to the table, ashen-faced and shaking.
Schwartz, his coat stained and rumpled, sat zombie-like across the table.
Girls didn't say much.
Pink ladies just aren't straight bourbon.
The waitress returned as if on cue, bearing a piece of paper. The damages, gentlemen.
Taking the old man's 20 out of my wallet, I handed it to him with as much flourish as I could muster. There is no point in even looking over the check.
I couldn't have read it anyway. In one last attempt to recoup my cosmopolitan image, I said offhandedly,
"Keep the change."
Wanda beamed in unconcealed ecstasy.
The drive home in the saturated car was not quite the same as the one that had begun the evening so many weeks earlier.
Our rapidly fermenting coats made the enclosed air rich and gamey.
And Schwartz, who had stopped belching finally, sat with his head pulled low between his shoulder blades, staring straight ahead.
Only the girls preserved the joyousness of this occasion.
Yeah, women always survive.
In a daze, I dropped off Schwartz and Claire May and drove in silence towards Wanda's home. A faint dawn was approaching from the east.
We stood on the porch for the last ritual encounter. A chill dawn wind rustled the lilac bushes.
This was the most wonderful, wonderful night of my whole life. I always dreamed the prom would be like this.
Breathed Wanda, gazing passionately up into my watering eyes.
Me too.
It was all I could manage.
I knew what was expected of me now. Swaying slightly, I leaned forward.
And the faint odor of sauerkraut from her parted lips coiled slowly into my nostrils.
This was not in the script.
I knew better. I better get off that porch fast, or else.
Backpedaling desperately down the stairs, I blurted by.
Fighting down my rising gorge, clamping my mouth shut, I leaped into the Ford, burned rubber, and tore off into the dawn.
The sun was just rising as I swung the car up the driveway, and I eased myself quietly into the kitchen.
The old man was going fishing that morning and sat at his enamel table, sipping his black coffee. Well, you look like you had one hell of a prom, son.
Was all he said.
I sure did.
How about I make you something to eat?
He asked sardonically.
At the word eat, my stomach heaved convulsively.
I shook my head numbly.
That's what I thought. Go up and get some sleep. You'll feel better in a couple of days when your head stops banging.
He went back to reading his paper.
I staggered into my bedroom, losing bits of clothing as I went.
My soggy Hollywood paisley cummerbund, the veteran of another gala night, was flung beneath my dresser as I toppled into my bed.
My brother muttered in his sleep across the room. He was still just a kid.
But his time would come.